Hi, the final way that we will be looking at solving quadratics is called the quadratic formula. Now, we've looked at various ways with factoring, completing the square, square rooting, several different ways, graphing, and not all of these ways will work every single time. The quadratic formula will work with every single problem. Whether we have zeros or we don't have zeros, it's always going to work. Factoring only works when the polynomial can be factored. So that makes the quadratic formula a very useful tool because you can use this to solve any problem and find what those zeros are. However, it looks complicated, and there are a few different ways that you can remember this. The first is I have a story, and it's always x equals because we're finding the zeros, the x-intercepts, all of that. But here's the story, and if you remember the story, it will help you write the quadratic formula. It says the negative boy, so there's your negative b, couldn't decide, so we have a plus or a minus sign, whether to go to the radical party or b square. So that's why we have the radical as the square root, or b squared, and miss the 4 awesome chicks. So that's why we're missing, so we're subtracting the 4ac. The party was all over, so there's your fraction line, at 2 a.m., but we just drop off the m, so it was all over at 2a. That's one way. When I was growing up, teachers told us to sing it to Pop Goes the Weasel. And I have also added a few songs that I have in Google Classroom that you can watch that it goes through this quadratic formula. So what we need to do is we're going to look at how to use the quadratic formula to solve some of these problems. All right, so this is the first example that we're going to look at, and I have written the quadratic formula over here. Unfortunately, the quadratic formula is not on the formula sheet that you will get for the air test, so this is something that you will have to know. Easiest way to learn it is to write it down for every single problem. The more you write it, the more you're going to learn it, and the more it's going to stick with you. The A's, B's, and C's over here refer to these numbers that are in our equation. So, as we've been doing for the last 2 chapters, the A is 9. The B is -6, and my C is 1 on this example. And remember, before you can start, you have to have it equal to 0. If it's not equal to 0, we're going to have to move some stuff. So over here, it's x equals -b, so that's the opposite, which is 6, plus or minus b squared. So on this first one, I'm going to write -6 squared minus 4. Fill in my a, which is 9. Fill in my c, which is 1. And divide by 2 times my a, which is 9. Now I'm going to go through here and simplify. And the first thing that I want to simplify is what's inside the square root. So I have 6 plus or minus, and when I take the square root, this is going to be 36, and remember, even though it's negative, when I square it, I get 36. And this is 4 times 9 times 1 is 36. And it's all over 2 times 9, which is 18. So I have 6 plus or minus. Now 36 minus 36 is 0. And the square root of 0 is 0. Divide by 18. And I really don't have to worry about adding or subtracting 0 because that's nothing. 6 over 18. So therefore my answer would reduce to 1/3, which is what I would enter in this box for Math Excel. So looking at this next problem, first thing that I see is it has equal 1. And I'm not going to be able to do anything with my quadratic formula until I get that equal to 0. So I'm going to keep it 2x squared minus 13x. And I have to subtract this 1 to the other side of the equation so that now it equals 0. This means my a is 2, my b is negative 13, and my c is negative 1. So I fill these numbers into my quadratic formula. Negative b, since it's negative 13, I make it positive 13. Plus or minus. And then I take the square root, of negative 13 squared minus 4 times my a times my c, all over 2 times my a, which is also 2. So I get 13 plus or minus, and when I take negative 13 times negative 13, I get 169. And I have a negative times a negative is a positive. 4 times 2 times 1, which is 8. And then the bottom is just 4. So I get 13 plus or minus. When I simplify this, I get 177 over 4. And 177, I do not believe it breaks down. So this is going to be your answer. You will type it in as 2 separate parts. And I went ahead and typed both of these in, so I have 13 plus radical 177 over 4, and then comma 13 minus radical 177 over 4. So there are my 2 answers. Right, this example, first thing that I'm going to do when I'm using quadratic formula is get it equal to 0. I personally like to have my squared term be positive. So I'm going to leave it 5p squared, and I'm going to add the 8p over, and I'm going to add the 3 to the other side, and now it equals 0. So I can identify my a, b, and c. A is 5, b is 8, and c is 3. Filling those numbers into my quadratic formula, negative b, so that's negative 8, plus or minus b squared, and if you're at the point where you can automatically see that that's going to be 64, you could go ahead and write that in, minus 4 times the a times the c, divided by 2 times the a. Right, so then I go through and simplify what's in here. So negative 8 plus or minus square root of 64. And this is going to be minus. Here I get 20 times 3 is 60. All over 10. And I have 64 minus 60, which is 4. And I'm taking the square root of 4, which I know is 2, over 10. Now, because neither of these are radicals, I can actually go ahead and add and subtract them and simplify this. So negative 8 plus 2 is negative 6 over 10. And then negative 8 minus 2 is negative 10 over 10. Now, if I reduce each of these fractions, I get negative 3/5. And down here, I get negative 1. So these are my 2 zeros. These are the 2 locations on the graph where it crosses the x-axis. So hopefully these examples help.